Welcome to Newsbeacon, your trusted source for breaking headlines, global insights, and sharp analysis from around the world. If you're new here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. On September 12, 2025, the fragile search for Middle East peace was shattered by an Israeli airstrike in Doha, Qatar. The world watched in disbelief as the news broke, sending shockwaves through diplomatic circles and igniting a wave of uncertainty across the region. This was not a battlefield strike, but a precision attack deep inside a nation known for hosting diplomatic negotiations. Doha, often seen as a sanctuary for dialogue and compromise, suddenly became the epicenter of a new and dangerous escalation. The targets, senior Hamas political leaders, were gathered to review a US-backed ceasefire proposal, a meeting that was supposed to be a step toward ending months of violence. Instead, it became the scene of devastation and renewed conflict. The strike marked a dramatic escalation, taking Israel's campaign against Hamas into the territory of a key mediator. For the first time, the conflict's front lines had crossed into a country that had long played host to delicate negotiations. 6 people died, including 5 Hamas members and a Qatari national, intensifying the diplomatic fallout. The loss of life on neutral ground sent a chilling message to all parties involved. The attack signaled that even supposed safe havens for dialogue were no longer off-limits. The sanctity of negotiation tables, once respected by all sides, was now in question. Israel, led by Prime Minister Netanyahu, took a calculated risk, prioritizing military objectives over delicate diplomacy. The decision reflected a willingness to challenge international norms in pursuit of its goals. The timing was critical, striking as hope for a ceasefire and hostage release deal was emerging. The world had been watching for a breakthrough, but instead witnessed a setback that could have lasting repercussions. By targeting the Hamas delegation during negotiations, Israel sent a clear message: dismantling Hamas leadership takes precedence, even if it means striking in the heart of diplomacy. Doha's status as a neutral mediator hosting the Hamas political office at the US's request was directly challenged. The city's reputation as a safe space for dialogue was now under threat. The strike was seen as an affront to Qatari sovereignty and its crucial diplomatic role. Qatar's leaders condemned the attack, warning that such actions could undermine years of painstaking negotiation efforts. It called into question the unwritten rules of engagement and threatened to unravel the already tenuous peace process. The sense of trust that had allowed talks to proceed was now deeply shaken. The region, and the world, were left reeling from this bold and destabilizing move. As the dust settled in Doha, the future of Middle East diplomacy hung in the balance, with uncertainty and fear replacing the fragile hope that once filled the air. Qatar's response was swift and furious. The Prime Minister condemned the attack as state terrorism, declaring the peace process dead. Years of careful diplomacy, hosting Hamas at the US's urging, were upended in a single strike. The Emir's attendance at the victim's funeral sent a powerful message of mourning and defiance. Qatar now faces a dilemma: continue mediating, or take a harder line against Israel under pressure from its people and the Arab world. The trust essential for mediation has been badly damaged. Officials openly question whether negotiations can continue if their capital is not safe. Qatar's central role in peace talks is now in jeopardy. The world watches to see if Doha will retreat or redouble its efforts. The Doha airstrike didn't just kill 6 people, it killed the momentum for a Gaza ceasefire. The fragile threads of diplomacy were severed in an instant. Mediators from Qatar, Egypt, and the US had been cautiously optimistic about a new proposal. They believed they were on the brink of a breakthrough. The strike abruptly derailed negotiations, hardening Hamas's stance and deepening distrust. The atmosphere shifted from hopeful to hostile. Senior Hamas negotiator Khalil al-Hayya, who lost his son, now has personal reasons to reject further talks. His grief has turned into a powerful motivator against compromise. For Qatar, the attack created a crisis of confidence in its role as mediator. The nation now questions its ability to facilitate peace. The US and Egypt lost their most effective channel to Hamas. Diplomatic avenues that took years to build were destroyed in seconds. The Trump administration's diplomatic efforts suffered a major setback, with Israel's actions seen as a challenge to American leadership. The balance of power in the region is now more precarious. The US is left scrambling to salvage a process its own ally just sabotaged. The urgency in Washington is palpable, as officials seek a new path forward. The path to a ceasefire and hostage release is now longer and more uncertain than ever. Families wait in agony, hoping for a resolution that seems increasingly distant. The hope for peace has been replaced by a new wave of obstacles. The dream of a ceasefire is overshadowed by the harsh reality of ongoing conflict. The Israeli airstrike on Doha triggered immediate, widespread international condemnation. Governments and global bodies decried the attack on a neutral nation hosting peace talks. The United Nations Security Council passed a rare, unanimous resolution condemning the strikes and reaffirming Qatar's sovereignty. The resolution, though not naming Israel, was a clear rebuke and a warning against future violations. The world signaled its support for diplomacy and Qatar's role as mediator. European and Middle Eastern leaders expressed grave concern over the escalation. The attack was seen as a dangerous violation of diplomatic norms, raising fears of a wider regional war. The global reaction underscored the deep alarm at the attack's implications for Middle East stability. The United States found itself in a diplomatic bind after the Doha strike, caught between its long-standing alliances and the shifting realities on the ground. The attack sent shockwaves through Washington, forcing officials to quickly reassess their approach to the region. As Israel's closest ally and sponsor of the derailed ceasefire, Washington had to balance support for Israel with outrage over the attack. The administration faced mounting pressure from both domestic critics and international partners, all demanding a clear response. President Trump was reportedly frustrated, and U.S. diplomats softened the UN resolution's language to avoid directly naming Israel. This careful wording reflected the administration's struggle to maintain its alliance while not appearing to condone the violence. Yet, the U.S. ultimately voted to condemn the strikes, a rare break in its usual support. This move surprised many observers and signaled a possible shift in Washington's approach, at least temporarily. The incident strained U.S.-Israel relations and made Washington appear ineffective. Critics argued that the U.S. response was muddled, and allies questioned whether America could still lead peace efforts. America's credibility as a peace broker is now in question. The world is watching to see if Washington can regain its footing and restore its reputation as a reliable mediator. The U.S. must work to restore trust with Arab partners like Qatar and Egypt, whose mediation roles are now at risk. These relationships are crucial for any future negotiations, and their confidence in American leadership has been shaken. Behind the scenes, Washington will pressure Israel to avoid similar actions. Quiet diplomacy and back-channel talks will be essential to prevent further escalation and to keep fragile alliances intact. Publicly, it must try to revive negotiations in a much more challenging environment. The stakes are higher than ever, and every move will be scrutinized by both allies and adversaries. The path to salvaging the peace process will require extraordinary diplomatic effort, creative solutions, and a willingness to rebuild trust on all sides. Only through persistent engagement can the U.S. hope to restore stability and move the region toward peace. The Israeli strike in Doha sent shockwaves through the Gulf. Saudi Arabia condemned the attack, calling for international action and warning of regional instability. The Saudis, once moving toward normalization with Israel, now face pressure to reaffirm solidarity with the Arab world. The UAE and Bahrain, who normalized ties with Israel, must now navigate public anger and regional backlash. The strike forces Gulf states to choose between strategic partnerships and regional unity. The risk of escalation and instability has grown, threatening the fragile balance that underpins Gulf security. The attack is a stark reminder that no country in the region is immune from the conflict's reach. The long-term consequences for Gulf stability and global energy markets remain uncertain. From West Africa, Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso delivered a sharp condemnation of the Doha strike. He called it blatant aggression and a violation of international law, expressing solidarity with Palestine and Qatar. Traoré's message, free of diplomatic caution, resonated with anti-imperialist sentiment across the global south. Since taking power, he's distanced Burkina Faso from Western partners, aligning with new allies and supporting the Palestinian cause. His statement reinforced his image as a revolutionary leader unafraid to challenge powerful nations. While Burkina Faso lacks direct influence, Traoré's voice added to the global chorus of dissent. The anger over the Doha strike has reached far beyond the Middle East. Despite global condemnation, Israel defended the Doha airstrike as a necessary military operation. Officials insisted that targeting Hamas leadership, regardless of location, was essential to their security. Prime Minister Netanyahu, facing an ICC arrest warrant, remained unrepentant and vowed to continue such operations. This security-first doctrine prioritizes military objectives over diplomacy, projecting strength to Israel's domestic audience. The decision to strike during peace talks reflects deep skepticism about negotiations with Hamas. Israel's strategy leaves little room for compromise, aiming for Hamas's total defeat. But this approach has isolated Israel internationally and strained its U.S. alliance. The attack derailed the only viable process for hostage release and inflamed regional tensions. By focusing on short-term gains, Israel risks sacrificing long-term stability and peace. The future has become even more perilous. The Doha airstrike has cast a long shadow over the Middle East's future. The US-backed ceasefire process is in ruins, with trust shattered and negotiations stalled. The architecture for dialogue has been badly damaged, perhaps beyond repair. Israel's willingness to strike in a Gulf capital has forced regional powers to reassess their security and diplomacy. The dream of a new integrated Middle East now seems distant. The risk of wider conflict has grown, with the Israeli-Palestinian issue again driving instability. For Israelis and Palestinians, the war in Gaza grinds on, with little hope for relief. The hardening of positions means the cycle of violence is likely to continue. Rebuilding trust and political will for peace will be a monumental challenge. Without renewed commitment to a political solution, the region remains trapped in conflict, with the Doha strike marking a dark turning point.